1 week season.
Hello, friends, and welcome to a Week 4 edition of the OWS Roster Review Pod. I'm your host, StatATL. This week, like most weeks, we're going to review about a dozen rosters submitted from OWS subscribers, as well as one from myself, as well as another OWS contributor. So with that, let's hop in with our first build coming from OWS Inner Circle member Tim Speros. So this is a Justin Fields double stack with both Pickens and Freiermuth, no bringback. So if Justin Fields is giving you a tournament-worthy score, he is probably being pushed or playing from behind based on how we've seen Pittsburgh operate all season. So if this is the case, I'd rather see this roster feature either JT, Pittman, or Downs on this build. Outside of the stack, we've got Nico Collins and Christian Kirk in a mini correlation. I really like that. You've got James Conner and the Cards D here, also in a mini correlation. I thought that was really strong. And then you've got Jordan Mason and Zach Moss as one-offs. So I like that. Outside of adding a Colt to this build, my only other feedback is to swap out that stochastic logo to an OWS avatar, and maybe we can see this roster go from 55th place to first. But thank you for the submission this week, Tim. So the next roster comes from Inner Circle member Big Ben, Big Ten. It is a Kyler skinny stack with Marvin Harrison Jr., and you brought it back with Brian Robinson. I really liked that start. I did that quite a bit myself. The roster then features Aaron Jones and the Vikings D in a mini correlation. So I really liked that. You know, we knew Jordan Love would be coming back in his first game, uncertain of his status, and the Vikings D had shown to be very strong so far this season. So I really liked that bet. The roster also has more correlation with Nico Collins and Strange in a mini correlation. So I really liked that. And then you've got Najee Harris, a strong, one-off here on paper with Jaylen Warren out. So I really did like that. Najee Harris was one of my bigger bets this week that just didn't work out. And then you've got Alan Lazard here as the only uncorrelated piece. I don't mind that at lower salary. Taking a piece that was very low owned and playing a different 3K punt than everyone else. So thank you for the submission this week, Big Ben. So the next roster comes from Inner Circle member Coach 232. It's a $5 3 max into a 12,000 entrant contest. And this is an Andy Dalton skinny stack with no bringback, Andy Dalton and Deontay Johnson. So with a pocket passer like Andy Dalton, I generally prefer to see a double stack because for him to be giving you a tournament-worthy score, like with 300 yards with 3 touchdowns, if he's giving you that type of performance, it's likely bringing along 2 different pass catchers. So I'd rather have seen you add Xavier Legette or Tommy Tremble or even Chuba Hubbard to this build. You've then got Brian Robinson and Marvin Harrison in a mini correlation. I like that a lot, but no other correlation on this roster. So Saquon Barkley, Nico Collins are strong like one-off pieces. But I'd rather see Tommy Tremble here instead of Taysom Hill or Cade Otton to correlate with Barkley. Again, just because your roster doesn't feature a lot of correlation doesn't mean that it can't win. It's just more things that you have to get right. So thank you for the submission this week, Coach. So the next roster is a $12 single entry from Inner Circle member Peacemaker. As you see, it is a Stroud double with both Nico and Schultz. And you brought it back with Brian Thomas Jr. So I really like this. I think double stacking Stroud is the right way to do it. And, Dalton Schultz offers you some really good leverage off of Stephon Diggs. Even though Nico Collins was very popular, as you see, Dalton Schultz only 2% owned. A nice way to uniquely stack a somewhat popular game. So I really like this start. You also feature Chuba Hubbard and Jamar Chase in a mini correlation. I really like that. And then you additionally correlated both the Steelers D and Najee Harris in a mini correlation, something I did a lot myself. Didn't quite pan out this week, but I did really like that construction. And then your only one off here is Noah Brown. So I like that as a way to get an inexpensive action into one of the highest owned games, one of the best game environments in Washington and Arizona. So I liked this build. Peacemaker, thank you for the submission. So the next roster comes from Inner Circle member Dogman1. It is a $12 single entry. Living in Atlanta. I do love the avatar there of the UGA helmet Dogman. Not the outcome we wanted on Saturday, but a great game just as a fan to watch. With my UGA love aside, we've got a Kyler Murray double stack here with both James Conner and Marvin Harrison. So I really like that. You brought it back with Brian Robinson. Really strong start to this build. I like that correlation. The roster then features a Diggs and Christian Kirk mini. I really liked that as well. And the roster has Conklin and Mooney as one-offs with the Steelers D. So I think on this build, I would have rather have seen Taysom Hill here instead of Ty Conklin to correlate with Darnell Mooney. Again, just one less thing that you have to get right. And I think from strictly a construction standpoint, just make sure that you're getting in the habit of playing Marvin Harrison here in the flex instead of Mooney as your latest starting player, with Harrison in a 4:00 start and the Atlanta Saints game, all 1:00 Eastern start. But thank you for the submission this week, Dogman. So the next build comes from Inner Circle member Ball Game. It is a $50 single entry with 2,300 entrants. This is a Caleb Williams skinny stack with DJ Moore. No bring back here. Again, bring backs not required. It's something that I personally like, but again, not something that you have to do, so don't mind this start. You've got Aaron Jones and Jaden Reed here in a mini correlation, so I really did like that as well, something I did myself. You've also got Nico Collins and Strange here, and Strange as another correlation. I really liked that here as well. And then Vikings D on this build with Aaron Jones, kind of correlating that as well, tying that in with Jaden Reed. I really liked that. So a lot of correlation on this roster. You accounted for the Washington-Arizona game with James Conner, so I really liked that. And so a really good build Ball Game. One that I think could do better. I know I see it finished 200th, 234 out of 2,300, so a top 10 performance. Certainly could have gotten a better outcome there. So thank you for the submission. A good roster this week. So the next build comes from Inner Circle member Help Maia. It's a $10 single entry into a very small 30-entrant contest, I believe. Help Maia mentioned this being like a private contest, paying the top 3 finishers. So this is a Burrow double with T. Higgins and Mike Gesicki. You brought it back with Deontay Johnson. So don't mind that. I do like a double stack with Joe Burrow. So from a construction standpoint, I did like that. You've got Connor and Robinson as a mini correlation. So a different way to kind of account for a very popular game environment between Washington and Arizona. The roster also features Christian Kirk and Nico Collins in a mini correlation. So I really like that. And you've got the Saints D here, low owned. Looks like you were the only roster with the Saints. So I do really like this build. Very correlated, betting on 2 or 3 game environments, all ones that were projected higher scoring from Vegas. So I really do like this roster and appreciate the submission. So the next roster comes from Inner Circle member Caps Fan. This is a $12 single entry. And as you see, it is a Kyler double with Connor and Marvin Harrison Jr. And you brought it back with Brian Robinson. So this was a start I really liked. This week I really felt like the best game environment, no surprise to the field, was that Washington and Arizona. And so for me, I wanted to feel like I wanted to account for that game on basically every roster that I built. And so I really liked this start from you here. Roster has some additional good correlation between Nico Collins and Christian Kirk in a mini with Strange here as well. And then you've got the Saints D and Darnell Mooney in a correlation, kind of playing to the story of the Saints defense. Has some turnovers, maybe turns it into a pick six or a special teams touchdown, forcing Atlanta to throw more. So I did like that correlation as well. Tells a straightforward story. So thank you for the submission this week, Caps Fan. The next build comes from Inner Circle member Word Drew. It's a $12 single entry. And this is Jaden Daniels skinny stack with Brian Robinson. And you brought it back with Marvin Harrison Jr. I really liked this start. I feel like when you're building rosters and you're starting out with either Kyler Murray or Jaden Daniels and you're building around that game, there's nothing wrong with starting with, a more popular or chalky build to begin, but you just have to be conscious of the rest of your roster when you're starting out that way. And, when you're looking at this build in particular, you don't have any lower owned pieces. So this is a really, again, not saying that you have to play low owned pivots just to play, a 3% owned player. But it's really hard for you to have a unique roster when, almost everyone on your roster is 20 or 30% owned, which is probably fine in, the last contest we looked at, a 30-person field. But once you're getting into 2,500, 5,000 and up contests, you really want to be conscious a little bit of ownership and just making sure that you're not playing the chalk across the board. So this roster also, has more correlation with Jamar Chase and Deontay Johnson in a mini correlation. You've looped in Mike Gesicki there as well. So I like that. You've got Darnell Mooney as a one-off here. I think I'd rather see Taysom Hill here instead of Gesicki to correlate with Mooney. Because if Gesicki and Jamar Chase are giving you really strong scores, it's more than likely that Joe Burrow is giving you a strong tournament-worthy score at lower cost and lower ownership than Jaden Daniels. So I think here I'd rather see you go Taysom Hill here, correlate that with Darnell Mooney, or you maybe even go Olave instead of Chase to just kind of give you more correlation. And slightly different build. So you've got Najee Harris as a one-off, a really solid play, as we've previously discussed with Warren out, expected Harris to touch the ball 20 plus times against an Indy team that has struggled with the run all season. So, strong process, just, didn't work out for you this time. But overall, I liked the build here. Word Drew, thank you for the submission. So the next roster comes from Inner Circle member KM. It is a $50 single entry into a 5,700 entrant contest. And as you see, this is a huge game stack built around a CJ Stroud double with both Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins. And you brought it back with both Kirk and Strange. So I like this because if you're getting a strong score out of both Diggs and Collins, a tournament-worthy score, Jacksonville is likely pushing the Texans. So I like including multiple Texans here. You then accounted for the Washington-Arizona game with both Connor and Robinson. So I did like that. They both catch passes. With Austin Eckler out, we expected Brian Robinson to basically see the lion's share of the work, and he did. Game got a little out of hand. So you even saw Jeremy McNicholas get some run there in the fourth quarter. And James Conner, a strong play every week. So I really did like this build here. The only one-off on this roster is George Kittle. So in a contest this size, I don't really love playing two tight ends. Especially even, I don't love Kittle even more on this build when we knew that Deebo Samuel is active. So yes, you're getting a 2% owned Kittle, and we have seen his ceiling, him being able to put up 30 or 40 points. Just against New England, not a team that has seen much success on offense. It didn't feel like the right situation for Kittle in a game that, San Francisco was unlikely to be pushed. So, I think I'd rather see, if you're going to play a 49er, I'd rather see Jordan Mason there. And then if you need a little bit of the salary relief, you can obviously pay down off of the Buccaneers. But thank you for the submission this week, KM. So the next roster comes from Inner Circle member A Train 531. It is a $12 single entry. And this is an Andy Dalton skinny stack with just Tommy Tremble. So again, with a pocket passer like Dalton, I generally prefer a double stack. If he's giving you that 303 performance, he's likely bringing along two pass catchers. So again, I'd rather see Xavier Legette. I'd rather see Deontay Johnson here. Even Chuba Hubbard, I think, would be fine here. I would love to see more correlation on this build. All one-offs between Chris Godwin, Rashid Shaheed, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice, Najee Harris, Brian Robinson. Most of those are very strong plays as one-offs, and not having more correlation doesn't mean it can't win. It's just more things that you have to get right. So, I think on this build with Nico, I'd rather see Brian Thomas Jr. or Christian Kirk instead of Rashid Shaheed. And, obviously a lot of things that you could do a little differently. But I think as a focus, that's where I would focus on your single entry builds. I would be looking to incorporate more correlation. But thank you for the submission this week, A-Train. So the next roster comes from OWS contributor Papy. This is a $3 20 max into the huge 230 entrant contest. It is a Kyler Murray skinny with Marvin Harrison. Brought it back with Brian Robinson. As we've talked about at the start, I really liked. Roster also features an Akins and Trey Tucker mini correlation, a really nice way to correlate Trey Tucker, who was very popular as a pay down option, but very few people were correlating that with Akins. Akins a 1% owned player, so I really did like that. You've got Zach Moss, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, and the Vikings D here, all as uncorrelated one-offs. So I think all of them are strong plays individually, but personally, Papy, I'd rather see just a little bit more correlation. So maybe, Deontay Johnson instead of Evans to correlate with Moss, or, Aaron Jones instead of Moss to correlate with the Vikings D. Again, correlation not required. Just personally, I like to try to get less things right. But thank you for the submission this week, Papy. And then, as always, we will finish with my $50 single entry build. It is a Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison skinny stack. Brought it back with Brian Robinson. For me this week, I had about 50% Marvin Harrison and Kyler Murray. Thought they were the best game environment. If I wasn't playing Kyler Murray, I think the remaining 50% of my builds, I think I had about 30% Jaden Daniels. So I really went all in on this game and brought it back with Brian Robinson here. Again, just really liked that correlation. I've got Nico Collins and Brian Thomas Jr. here. Again, in another mini correlation. You see Najee Harris and the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've talked about that as well. Really liked Pittsburgh defense this week against what had previously been a struggling Colts offense, and was expecting Najee Harris to touch the ball 20 to 25 times. And then the final mini correlation you see is Deontay Johnson and Eric Alt Jr. Eric Alt is a rookie tight end that has been continuing to see more and more work the past couple of weeks. I think he's had 4 targets the last 2 weeks. I think he saw 4 targets this week. And at min salary, I think 2,500. I liked kind of opening up a little bit more salary if I was going to completely punt at tight end. So, as always, thank you for tuning in this week, and appreciate everyone's rosters and submissions. I think I got 47 this week, so please don't get discouraged if I didn't get to you this week. But thanks for tuning in, and hope to see you and your OWS avatar at the top of the leaderboard again this week. Have a good one.